Hi, it's Steve Hargadon, and welcome to the final session of today's mini conference, Emergency Remote Teaching and Learning. This is 10 fantastic ideas for online teaching. Ditch that textbook. I'm going to let John and Matt start us off, and you'll see there's going to be a lot of fun tonight.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I just don't want to disorient you, Steve. Somebody said that they love the chit chat. Expect a lot of that to continue.
Oh, yes,
A
plenty.
lot of chit chat on the way.
Yes.
Welcome. Your oversharers tonight are myself, John Corippo, and Matt Miller. And we're going to share a thing called a Q duet. But first, I need to introduce our EduRef, Steve Hargadon. Steve, tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Oh, they've heard way too much about me. I'm super glad to be here, and I'm super glad to have John and Matt. And we've had a really fun day with this Learning Revolution project mini conference. The whole idea of the Learning Revolution is to have a daily online conference on education. So I hope that you'll tell your friends, and a lot of great sessions going on.
Oh, and I just saw this as somebody said that they're from the Bahamas. I just want to let anybody know that I do free PD in the Bahamas. If you want to reach out to me, just get me there, and all the PD is free. So anyway. I don't think I'm wearing a Santa hat. No, that's my I got a goatee going. So to give folks an idea of the way that a Q duet works is each of the contenders have a topic, which, as Steve has shared, is the 10 fantastic ideas for teaching online. And then the part that struck through here is that Matt and I originally built this slide deck without seeing each other's slides, and that's kind of the fun part. So I made 5 slides and Matt made 5. And the first time we did this, because we're doing this as like a reprise or an encore, we had not seen each other's slides, but I guarantee you Matt and I have forgotten each other's slides in the meantime.
Right.
And so part of what makes it fun, because Matt and I are both chatty, is that we get 2 minutes per slide and then 1 minute to rebut or add on or +1. So I'm going to just explain myself a little bit if you guys don't know me. I've been in education game for about 24 years. It's actually a 3rd career for me. I've taught 4th through 12th grade. I've been a high school principal. I started a MacBook take-home high school class school from scratch, which was really fun. I've been a county office level IT director, an assistant superintendent, and I'm currently the chief learning officer for Q. And that's my Twitter handle. One little dig at Matt is all my sessions come with free lifetime tech support. So if I say something and you're like, John, I sort of got it, but I didn't, tweet it at me. I'll hook you up. Matt Miller, introduce yourself.
John, by the way, is the guy who, if you get an email from him, part of his email signature says the words "helpful guy."
Helpful guy.
Which is very much the case. I can agree to that. So, hey everyone, my name's Matt Miller. I taught high school Spanish for 11 years here in little bitty rural West Central Indiana. Teeny tiny school, graduating class of 32 most recently while I was there. And yes, we did have a drive your tractor to school day. If that kind of gives you an idea of what it's like. Taught high school Spanish my entire career, have written 3 books, including Ditch That Textbook, with the 4th one coming up, Tech Like a Pirate, supposed to come out in May. Pretty excited about that. Co-host of the Google Teacher Podcast. And my hashtag is Ditchbook, where we're talking all about ways that we can think outside of the textbook. There's my Twitter handle right there. And
actually, Matt, I'm going to jump in right now because we're going to model. You shared that you had to take your tractor to school day. And
yes.
The school district I worked at was so small that I was there at the board meeting when they removed the administrative regulation that allowed students to ride their horse to school. Right in the same zone. Right in the same zone with you.
Was that the same day where they took the gun racks out of the back of the kids' pickup trucks?
I don't want to go there right now. This is an international audience.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay.
So moving on, and reminder, tonight's topic is top 10 fantastic ideas for online teaching. Again, Matt and I will each share 5, and we will be interspersed. And you can see mine's the more positive one here. Matt's is a little more aggressive.
Yes.
Matt made the mistake of putting his first, so I counteracted. But first, for some levity, this is one of my best descriptions. And Steve, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I saw this on the internet thanks to Kim Vogie, because basically, I've seen, the bottom line for this one for me is I've seen more change in education last week, seen 20 years. Take it from there, Steve. What are your thoughts?
You broke up there for just a second, but I think we were talking before we started that this has been a really fascinating time to watch how we're resetting ourselves. And I think a lot of us are hopeful that this gives us an opportunity to really rethink things.
Yeah, yeah. And what I was saying when you might have lost me was I've seen more change in the last 4 weeks than I've seen in 20 years. And that's what I think is it's going to explain my next little quote that I'm going to share, which is stop being afraid of what could go wrong and start being excited about what could go right. Clearly, we are in a very, 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 very scary and unknown time with all this virus business, and the mortality rate is not good. But the flip side is, if you look a little farther out over the horizon, we have this opportunity where teachers all over the planet are using EdTech at levels that we could have never, ever anticipated a month ago. And so I'm excited about the Tony Robbins part of like, where could this go when we look at the long range, right? So I'm not trying to diminish where we are and the reality, but the other reality is sooner or later, we're going to go back to school. And what's that going to look like? And then Matt, I love this one from you. I love this one.
Yeah. I wanted to actually riff off your Tony Robbins quote a little bit and throw in one that this is kind of the version that I've used of that. There's a little bitty poem by Aaron Hansen, and it goes like this. I just Googled it. It says, "There is freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky, and you ask, what if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly?" So I'm thinking,
same kind of thing.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like, what if we fly? What if we try some of these things, and what if we fly? So, all right. So,
and then I would add on that safe teaching is risky teaching. My perspective is that if the safest thing you can do is get through the whole book, I believe you're risking human potential. I believe you're risking kids' lives when you do that. And I don't want to sound, alarmist, but the reality of it is if kids don't leave our classrooms better able to participate in a completely healthy way, emotionally and academically, then we have sacrificed a certain portion of their capacity. That's my take. Not to get too geeky.
Right. Yeah. And my take on this quote here, safe teaching is risky teaching, is this, that I think so often we do things that feel safe to us. And by safe, I think I mean comfortable. And so we do these things that feel safe and feel comfortable to us, but they might not be getting results, but that's the way we've always done them. And so if we continue to do something that doesn't get us results, that doesn't sound safe to me. That sounds risky. And so then if you flip it on its head and you think, well, what feels risky? Risky is trying something where you don't know how it's going to turn out. But if you do that and we get out of the status quo and we try some things that are outside of our comfort zone, all of a sudden we have our students' attention. And that may have been something that was missing during that safe teaching. When we have that attention, that can be huge. So in that case, the risky teaching feels safe when we look at it through that lens. So maybe safe teaching is risky teaching.
And Matt, I just put my language arts teacher hat on. Guess what we have on both slides? Paradoxes.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I didn't. Nicely done, John.
Last time either. Yes. Well, the language arts guys.
Yes. Yes.
So a little bit more for the audience. The way this goes, just to give you guys a visual, is John's going to have an idea or a thought, and John is going to have 2 minutes. Steve is going to enforce that 2 minutes. Steve is vicious about the timing, by the way, you guys. We practiced, and he just does not allow any leeway. And then when I get my 2 minutes, Steve will step in and separate me, pull me away from my slides and my clicker. And then Matt will get 1 minute to jump in and share and riff on what just happened. And again, like I said, we did this about 3 weeks ago, so I'm pretty sure Matt and I have forgotten each other's slides. So it's still going to be relatively pure. Okay, here we go. Let's get ready to rumble. Oh, one other thing is we call it a duet because I want you to imagine like Cher working with Ariana Grande. They're both trying to hit that high note, but they're not taking each other down. This is like a positive wrestling match. This is like, show me your best thing and then I'll add something on. So it's like creative license to just go crazy and unlimited supply of oil paints. Just get your trowel out and go crazy. So Steve, are you ready to kick us off?
I am ready.
Okay, Steve, you got the timer ready? Here we go. Timer's running. Matt?
All right. So let's kick this off. So as far as ideas for online teaching goes, I'm going to throw one out that if you're familiar with any of my work at all, this probably doesn't surprise you a bit, is to say, ditch that textbook. You know, I think a lot of the students probably, or some of them maybe ended up leaving those textbooks at the schools anyway. And my take on all of this is that, you know, for so long we've gotten so enamored, or at least so many people have, with marching chapter by chapter by chapter through the textbook, answering the discussion questions at the end, and then assigning a worksheet, and just sort of assuming that that's teaching and that students are learning because there's some activity with it. And then I found that whenever we can break out of that rut, let students create something. Kind of like one of the examples I put on the screen here was an infographic created in Google Drawings, you know, pulling some of that visual and some of that text together to demonstrate what they know. All of a sudden, that's a kind of learning that we don't get out of the textbook. Or how about inviting guests to our class, which is something that of course we can do while we're online. If we're doing one of those Zoom calls or a Google Meet call, or even in Microsoft Teams, to be able to invite somebody into our classroom as a guest speaker to talk to the students, to give them an opportunity to interact with somebody outside of the four walls of their classroom. You know, that can be huge. And so I think this kind of goes back to that whole safe teaching is risky teaching thing. If we look at what we've done for so long as the textbook way of, you know, the textbook way of teaching, textbook as an adjective, you know, as describing the way that's accepted, the way that people have done it for so long, maybe breaking out of that rut and trying something new, grab some of that attention. And that's what we were saying, that maybe after this is all set.
Okay, I cut him off, John.
See, I told you, the man has no mercy. When it's over, it's over.
Well,
And now I only have 1 minute, so I don't want to lose that. I just saw in the chat, I'm double riffing here, Matt. Peggy
have
saw.
I started my timer yet?
Oh, you may start now. Yes.
Go.
Peggy George shared a quote that said, a tweet from Daniel Hodge today, my students listed 20 things they like about remote learning, right? So just because it's different doesn't mean that it's not as good. And I think when I first read Matt's book, it felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. I was going through and going, oh, I had the same experience. I had the same experience. There's a really good book by Ted Dintersmith called What School Could Be. And it actually has a chart in there that shows that over the last 20 years, we haven't gotten much better of the US compared to the US, right? So not us compared to Finland or a monoculture where they have plenty of money and teachers are honored and all that kind of thing. But the idea is that when you compare the US to the US since 1970, we're not growing academically. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to say, is the textbook the only answer? And I think when you look at things like HyperDocs, and I'll be sharing Edu protocols in a little bit, that there's a...
Oh, John, I just cut you off.
Ooh, it's brutal tonight. I'm loving this.
You know, the bus leaves on time when I'm the tour guide.
Yes. Yes,
Now,
absolutely.
do I give you both the chance, because that was the first round, to finish your thoughts? Do either of you feel like you really got creamed there?
It wasn't too bad. No, I'm ready to go another round. I think I can handle this.
The first thing about Edu Duet Fight Club is that we don't talk about it. So yeah, it's good. So now, Steve, now you're getting oriented still. So now it's my turn. I get my 2 minutes. And this is one of the biggest things I want to tell somebody who's deciding that they're going to be good at online teaching. Okay. The first thing is, as a former film teacher, audio is easily 7/10 of the video experience. And if you're not sure, just poke one of your speakers with a needle and on your TV and listen to the TV when it goes. Turn the audio off with no closed captioning. Turn it up so that it's too loud. When audio is causing our processing to focus on the bad audio, we lose our cognitive ability. So one of the best things you guys can do as an online teacher is get yourself, if you look here on the left, get yourself a USB headset. They cost about $30. That's what Matt and I are both using right now. It'll make the audio less painful for your students. Make sure that you use headphones. Now that's the Pikachu headphones. And I don't know where you get them exactly. I just Googled it, but I'm pretty sure there's a website called Amazon that has them. Do use headphones regardless. because when you don't use headphones on a laptop, what's happening is your microphone is trying to process the person talking on the device or you. And that's why you get that thing that says, it seems like you're talking. Do you want to unmute? Don't do that. Give yourself at least headphones. And I use the Pikachu ones because just grab your kids' headphones and use those. And then you could also get the Blue Snowball, about $39. And it'll give you that super cool podcasty sound that everybody likes. So those are my options. Is definitely give people the best audio experience you can, and I'm out.
Oh, did you just come in under your time?
Oh yeah,
Wow,
I'm super
14
efficient, man.
seconds under.
Steve's
Wow.
been training me, and I'm highly responsive.
Nice. So I'm the one who's going to get smacked around by the host tonight. Okay, I'm good with that. All right. So here's my follow-up on that. You know, on John's slide, he said bad audio. What was it? Bad audio ruins good video. Right. So my follow-up to that is this. I'm going to say huge video robs student joy. Here's where I'm going with this. See, if we're going to do audio and video well, John gave you great ideas for the audio. When it comes to video, if you shoot a video on your phone at the highest settings possible and you try to upload it to YouTube or try to upload it to Google Drive, it's going to be enormous and it's going to be really hard for students to be able to load it. So if you're using a tool like Screencastify or anything else that lets you record video, change those settings so that you're recording at a lower resolution or a lower frame rate.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Matt, but I had to do it again.
I love it. Steve,
It was
you are
good material, but
and you do your job well. Okay, Matt, you're up. New idea.
Am I allowed to unmute my mic now?
Yep.
Okay, I better hustle on this one. Okay, so number 3 is find a lens to see student learning through. And here's what I mean by this. If we look at the activities that we have students do, let's take something simple like they just read something about history. And this one particular event in history, we want them to reflect on it, or we want them to recall what they learned. And so a lot of times what we'll ask them to do is write that into a document, or maybe even we ask them to record it. And when we have them recorded on video, we might use something like Flipgrid, where the students respond to that prompt with a short video clip. And so often those video clips are just us, head and shoulders straight into the video, and there's nothing special about it. And so here's what I propose. Let's look at that same activity. Let's look at that same prompt, but let's look at it through a new lens. And if we can see that activity through a new lens, all of a sudden it starts to feel different. So I've got a couple of examples here. Let's say that we were doing that historical, recalling some things about that historical event. What if we recall them as a news anchor? Have students sit down. Even if you use a tool like Flipgrid, you can put a little picture up over your shoulder just like a news anchor would do. Let's go below it. An on-the-scenes TV reporter. Have them grab their cell phone if they've got it, or their Chromebook or whatever, and go outside or go to a location and say, I'm on the scenes at this particular event and here's what's going on. Go to the top right. Horror movie. Do you remember the Blair Witch Project? It was that like low budget horror movie that was shot on a camcorder. That's even a way that you could record it. And then you've got reality game shows like Cash Cab, where you pretend to ask people questions. So lots of lenses that you can see these activities through.
oh my gosh, that was the perfect timing finish.
Oh, look at you, Matt. So I'm going to riff on what Matt's talking about. And my take on that is it doesn't always have to be you on screen, right? And so I really like the idea of using a Flipgrid with no kids' faces at all. I love the idea of a flip hunt, where kids can go and find things in their house and describe them. Kids can interview other people. Kids can do book talks. There's a lot of great things that folks can do besides talking to their camera. So Matt's idea was, hey, let's add a little schmutz to it, right? We'll have a funny hat. We'll have a cool background. We can have a theme. I've seen a lot of teachers do really cool things like that. But I would encourage folks to also say, hey, what if we make the only video time, the short video time, is just explain the setup, and then give the kids the reins. Boom.
Well,
I've now baffled Steve because I beat
15
him.
seconds to go.
15 seconds. Okay. And I want to put my 15 seconds on the next two slides. I'm going to yield my time to the
Cheating.
gentleman from
Cheating.
Indiana. Okay, so these are just like think of this as a Frere model of time and timing and content. So how long is a Looney Tune, Steve Hargadon? They're about 11 minutes, right? They can get that story in, they can get that story told, and they can get that story wrapped up in 11 minutes. And that's kind of what educators need to do now, is think, how can we get this done as efficiently as possible, which is not to rush. Like tonight we're rushing a little bit, but that's part of the fun. We're leaving plenty of time for Q&A at the end so the audience can ask questions. But the first thing is Looney Tunes, right? Try to get the thing in 11 or 12 minutes. The second square is this one right here, the one with the little timer. And that is, you got to have a clock in your head. And Matt, I know you've done a lot of presenting before, but sometimes you'll say to somebody, share me your idea. And 43 minutes later, they're still talking.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to have a timer in your head. It's no different than like an NFL quarterback. When he takes that ball, he knows he's got about 3 seconds to get it out, and he starts building that timer in his head. The next one I think is also relevant to this little pattern I'm on, which is this. All writing is a process of elimination. And the same is true for film. The number one thing that editors do in film is remove content so that the story is clear. And I think that's a really good model for teachers. And then if you guys and gals haven't heard of Krug's 3 laws of usability, I really like these 3 as you're designing your Google Sites, your assignments, and all those things. Number 1, don't make me think. Make the thing that you're going to be doing obvious. Number 2, it doesn't matter how many times I have to click, but make it a mindless, unambiguous choice. So click here to get things. Matt, how many times have you explained that there's not a turn it in button in Google Classroom?
That's a good point.
And then my favorite one is the last one. Get rid of half the words on the page and then get rid of half of what is left. And that's how you get readability up. And then
Oh, John, you're done. You shouldn't have turned that time over to.
Oh, too bad. John got cut. Okay.
Oh,
right.
okay, well, the audience can just read this one while I leave this slide on longer than it's supposed to be.
Cheating. That's twice. That's twice.
Nice. Okay, Matt.
I want seconds taken away from his later. Okay. All right. So I'm going to approve this one because, you know, especially out of the journalist heart in me. I was a journalism major in college, thought I was going to be a newspaper reporter my entire life. And during journalism school, they taught us a handful of things. One was brevity. Keep it short. When you're writing a newspaper article, people aren't generally going to read the whole thing. So that leads to the next thing, which is the inverted pyramid. The inverted pyramid says, if you think about the most important thing, you put it at the top. Then you put the next most important thing. Then you put the next most important thing. And so that all kind of plays together. You know, brevity, conciseness. This makes me think of memes too. Have you ever tried to assign students to create a meme? They've got to be brief and they got to be witty. And for them to do that, that requires some higher order understanding of the content.
Wow, 5 seconds to go.
Yes.
Nice. How relevant for that to be on the slide that talks about understanding homeschooling is not a 7-hour day. See how I did that?
That's a
Okay.
cheat.
3
All right.
demerits for you, Corippo. 3 demerits.
You can drive over to my house and deliver them whenever you want.
Okay. So the next one is value the non-textbook learning. Here's something that I'm starting to realize as a parent at home with 3 kids, is that my kids are doing e-learning. You know, a lot of times they get up in the morning and they work on their activities for a few hours and then they're done. But the learning doesn't stop there. My kids are learning all sorts of things away from the textbook. For instance, there's a piano in my house and my daughters have been playing it a lot. We've been taking walks in the woods and learning about things out there. You know, they're Googling things and they're YouTubing things. And the reality is that there's a lot of non-textbook learning going on right now in houses. And that is still learning. And that is very valuable learning. A lot of times, kids are getting the opportunity to do some of this learning that is the legacy type learning, the things that parents want to pass down to the next generation that they might not have had time to do. So let's find ways to value that. Instead of trying to push even more curriculum on them, let's find some ways to make all of that fit into what we want to do. Give them Flipgrid topics where they're able to share what they're learning from their parents, from their siblings, from their videos. And when we value that learning that the kids are doing, that they're doing on their own, that they're passionate about, it's contagious. And then when they're able to watch each other's learning, then they're learning from each other. So lots of ways for them to learn from the non-textbook learning that's going on.
Nice job.
I thought I was waiting for you to cut him off, Steve, so that was very disorienting for me.
You had 15 seconds left.
Phew.
Oh, I'll take that. Okay, so we've been talking for years that kids leave school and they don't know how to adult, right? That's that new phrase, adulting. And so I've been really thinking about this. If the audience wants to Google the phrase adulting classes, there are public libraries. Steve, I believe you have some librarians in here that are giving out adulting classes all over the United States. And so imagine teachers just making a 10-slide slide deck that says, top 10 things I would like you to know that I've learned about buying a used car. Top 10 things I would like you to know about using all the buttons on your washing machine. Top 10 tricks for cooking a better dinner. And I think we can engage kids in this way. And guess what? We're also sneaking in a lot of good learning because they'll be making slides. They'll be summarizing. They'll be relating. There's a lot of good SEL involved with this. And I think we can really celebrate this time that we've got. And I've seen so many neat examples of it. So that's one of the Tony Robbins things. That's what I'm excited about right now.
Yep.
Imagine schools doing adulting classes. All right, number six for me. We're moving along very nicely. This is probably the saddest question. I'm just going to let it sit here, Steve. I'm going to burn about 8 seconds. This is probably the saddest question I've seen on social media during this crisis.
I can hear a puppy whimpering in the background.
I am pausing for dramatic effect. Are you kidding me right now? If you spend all the time to make a PDF editable, there's going to be two main outcomes. One of them is going to be that you are going to waste a lot of time making PDFs that you now have to grade. Who should do that? That's the correct answer is nobody. The second thing that'll happen is these kids know how to screenshot stuff. And once they've typed their answers in, they will sell their answers to other kids for ding dongs. I know this because we used to do this with paper back in the old days. So my suggestion on this is, oh, thank you. As a public librarian, please do not make it an editable PDF. If you look at the bottom left here, let the machines work for you guys. Quizzes will grade it. Quill can grade it. Socrative can grade it. Nearpod, Pear Deck, HyperDocs, Edge Protocols. And here's my favorite little trick. Okay, so this is a thing called Math Reps. MathReps.com. And yes, I did date myself with ding dongs, Megan, but I didn't talk about Clark bars yet. That's really old.
Oh.
If you take what's on the left there, this is called a math rep, and this is first grade. Imagine what Amanda Sandoval did. She put these all into Pear Deck, and now they are a self-feedback, synchronous or asynchronous activity in which in one email, the teacher will get all the kids' answers. Oh my gosh, so much better. Mathreps.com. How am I doing on time, Steve?
You've got a good 20 seconds left.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to say this again slowly. Mathreps.com. What it does is it puts 10 or 15 standards in a single activity, and that's this part of the picture. Over here, there are these 4 different activities. They've just broken apart the things on the left and put them into Pear Deck or Nearpod, one slide at a time.
I had to cut them off.
I was waiting for that.
I knew you
I knew it was coming. I knew it. All right, very good.
I'm not deterred. It's still a good idea. Matt, go for it.
It is still a good idea. So much that you get the yeehaw slide for me on that one. Yeah, no, I totally agree with this. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people on Twitter or in email ask me, how can I take that worksheet and make it editable? And the question that I would want to ask them is, instead of having students fill in blanks like that, what can we have them create with what they've learned to show what they know? One of my favorite ones that comes right along with this is making infographics. I talked about making memes earlier, making little comic strips. I mean, there's all sorts of things where we can pull in the visuals and the text together. A, that's a lot more fun, but B, it's also very brain friendly. If you look up dual coding theory is all about how our brain processes image and text differently. So if we throw it both at them, it gives them, it makes the learning stickier. So there's so many different ways to do it. So much better than just an editable PDF. Ugh.
Oh, that was nice. I
Wow.
liked your tonality there at the end, Matt.
Mhm.
You're really on fire tonight. Okay,
Working
here you
on
go.
that for you. Yes. Okay, so our next one. This one is super important, and I can't tell you how many people I've seen talking about the importance of this. You know, I think when schools started closing and we started going to remote learning, a lot of people wanted answers to the questions, how do we teach to their heads? How are we going to get the information across? How are we going to teach? But so many good teachers also realized that we've got to teach to their hearts too. Because you see, with the schools closed, there is an important role that school plays that I think we don't think about very much when we're in school every single day. Sure, we use it to teach kids stuff, but it also gives them an opportunity to interact with each other. It gives them the opportunity to build their social skills, to figure out what works and what doesn't in conversation and in social situations. Sometimes the stuff doesn't work and you get sent to the principal's office, but then you end up learning something about it. Schools are so social. And when we don't have that social connection, whenever the students are isolated at home, all of a sudden that heart part gets disconnected. And so what can we do about that? I think some very simple stuff really works. Just like Joey Tribbiani right there in my
How
gift.
you doing?
How you doing? Yeah. just simply asking them, how are you doing? Ken Shelton, who's a great educator from California, talked about the importance of just making a simple Google form where you ask students, how are you doing? Tell me about it. And they fill this Google form out and they submit it. And you as the teacher can see and get kind of a pulse on what's going on with your students and then follow up with them. Something simple like that. A basic Flipgrid topic where students can check in with each other, let their classmates know what's going on, what they're doing, can be huge.
Wow, that was to the money.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so Matt, I'm gonna boom you with that one, and I'm just gonna ask our audience here a reflective question. No need to answer. What is it like to teach with an administrator who maybe doesn't get you? I'm not saying there's conflict. I'm just saying they don't get you. You're not sure exactly what they're looking for when you're doing your evaluation or your walkthroughs. How awkward is that? Now, be an 11-year-old with less skills to articulate that. And you've got a lot of cognitive load that is put on kids before they even start working. And I think if we look at what kids struggle with sometimes, if we look at kids that aren't doing the work, sometimes they're not doing the work because they're afraid of what the reaction might be. And so I'm a really strong believer, and I think, Matt, you're in the same boat. Feel free to jump in on my time. If you want kids to be creative in your classroom, you have to be creating an environment that allows small failure and lots of feedback. And if you're not, you're going to end up with people that are doing the bare minimum to finish the class. That's what you're
Yeah, and it starts early. It starts small, and they realize that stuff, and it builds over time. Totally agree with that.
Hey, can we pause for a second here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we in a position to take a minute and have a side conversation?
Yes, please.
You just asked me a question and then muted me, Steve.
I know, but your time ran out.
He really wanted to hear from me. That's what it was.
But it was so funny because it was very natural because Matt just jumped right in and it was like there was no pause. So,
Go for it.
So one of the interesting things about this moment in time, right, is that the technology is having effects that we can't really fully predict. So in the same way that YouTube probably changed learning more than any intentional ed tech technology ever had, right? So this remote connecting and the video conferencing and the like, you know, you've got to wonder, okay, what's this going to do? And a guy I really liked, Jim Vanites from HP Foundation years ago, said that all good technology in learning magnifies relationships. And so is that maybe one of the things that we're remembering right now, is that it's not about the work, right? But that the things that really have changed our lives were when people understood us or challenged us or saw potential in us, and that we're trying to kind of get back to that.
Yeah. Well, I would like to say that somewhere in No Child Left Behind, we lost the last of relationship-based teaching. How about that?
Yeah.
all we as a profession, I'm not talking about people that are necessarily in this audience or Matt or I, but what we live right now is strictly academic output. And if you look at the rise of anxiety, depression, all those things, we are clearly helping. Or let me reframe that, the positive statement. We are clearly underserving an element of our society, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
I don't want to put it on any one teacher. What I'm talking about is as a profession, we are not taking care of the whole child.
Yep. Totally agree with that. And if you think about John was talking about the cognitive effects of being able to have those small failures, you go to the opposite side of that. And all of a sudden, whenever students feel like they're threatened, the brain just doesn't work the same as it did otherwise. And then you can even go another route on this too and say, if you look at the National Association of, I think it's colleges and employers, they do a survey every year of what do employers look for in their new employees, and you start looking at some of the things that they're asking for. It's not those academic tasks. It's the ability to communicate, the ability to work in a group, work ethic. I mean, just all of these things that, people would call them soft skills, but they're the things that are getting kids hired. So that's a whole other direction that you can take this too, I think.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for allowing that segue.
Well, you're the EduRef, so
I was going to say you're the boss, so.
Yeah.
I didn't have to put a timer on myself.
There you go. All right, John,
Okay.
I think you're up next.
I am up next. And so I would like to talk about this, and which is practice fast feedback. Now I'm showing Nearpod here, but I don't have any official relationship with them. Pear Deck does basically the same kinds of things with some other subtle features. But the first time I opened Nearpod, I was like, oh dear God, I don't have time to learn these 900 buttons. But what I realized was really what we're looking for is let the kids start, and this is just what Matt said. Let's start with an open-ended question. How you doing today? Let the kids chat and talk and post a picture. Get them in the mood. Share some information that they want to learn. In this case, it was 3 famous Americans. Give them a little quiz. Have them take the quiz about the things they're going to do on the next 2 or 3 slides, and then give them a memory test. So this is like only 15 minutes to build, super efficient, and you allow the kids to get that fast feedback. You're not going to be grading anything tonight in this model because you're living it with them. Here's another model. This is called a random emoji power paragraph. And so basically what you do is instead of having kids write an essay or fill out a PDF, what you do is you drop them into Socrative, you have them do a short answer, and then on the quick question, you hit start vote, and you let them read each other's sentences on a nearly immediate basis. You give them feedback immediately. And then after you do about 3 rounds of that, you do what is called a nacho paragraph. Steve, what do you call cheese that's not yours?
Yeah, that's obvious. Nacho cheese.
Yes. So paragraphs that's not yours, nacho paragraph. So within a half an hour, I can have students do 3, 4, or 5 paragraphs with feedback. It's amazing. And when kids get fast feedback, Matt, they learn faster. And I believe you get me on this one based on your Bitmoji.
Yeah. I am loving this. Absolutely. This, this has edu protocols written all over it. Definitely the fast and the curious one. If folks have not heard that, definitely check that one out. But yeah, the feedback is huge. What we don't want is what I've heard my friend Alice Keeler call autopsy feedback. I'm sure lots of people have called it that before. It's the stuff where you hand things back at the very end with some feedback, and the kids are like, I so haven't thought about this for hours or days or something. That doesn't help anybody. And so it's really about learning smarter instead of harder. And I think this fits right in the same vein with the idea of retrieval practice. Doing a brain dump about something. Instead of just quizzing kids over things and taking points for it, what if we give them the opportunity to just dump everything out of their brain that they've learned? There's all sorts of cognitive science research that talks about how sticky learning is when we give them the opportunity to do that. And that's really what we're trying to do.
I had to stop him. You guys were doing so well.
We were. Well, we're
Leave it
streaky
to
that
me.
way. We're streaky that way. So Matt, you're up.
Okay, I'll try to do better on this one, Steve. All right, so at this point in the presentation, or at this point in the day, if you've been around Learning Revolution all day, or to several of them, you may be at this point overwhelmed, Or maybe it's the point in remote learning where you've tried so many different things and you've seen all of these things that you could try, and you're like, oh my goodness, I am so overwhelmed. I'm stuck. I don't even know what to do. I want to give you a definition of overwhelm that I think could be potentially empowering to you. See, I heard somebody say once that overwhelm is not the problem of having too many choices. It's not knowing where to start. And so if you have lots of choices in what to do next, lots of choices in your digital tools that you can choose from, lots of choices in how to spend your time with your students, and you just aren't sure what to do next, let me give you a couple of ideas. Number one, if you need a place to start small. Start with something that makes you say, I can do that. You know, that I can do. I can get it done. I can complete it. And then that will give you momentum to go on to the next thing. Number two, start with impact. This is the place where you know that if you made a little bit of improvement in your teaching, or if the students made a little bit of improvement in their learning, it would have a huge impact, because this is an area where they're struggling. And so we may want to start with some place where there's already some struggles. And, you know, if you want to look at it this way, it can't get any worse than it already is. You know what I mean? And so then you could also start with passion. My wife and I have this rule about cleaning the kitchen or cleaning the house. You never argue with motivation. If you're motivated to clean, you just do it, even if it's at 11:30 at night.
How did I cut him off at that moment? Can we give him the end of the story?
Yes, give them the end of the story.
I was going to say, I've got 30 seconds left. I'm timing it on my phone. All right. So you don't mess with motivation. And I think that's the same way with passion. If it's something you're excited about, something that your students are excited about, by golly, start there. Start with the passion, and then you can ride that wave into whatever comes next. Start small, start with impact, or start with passion, but just start, and that helps you defeat your overwhelm.
I think your phone's in a parallel universe that has time differently.
That is awesome. Okay, so I'm going to just use one of my slides that I didn't get to earlier. Look at that, Matt. I'm recycling.
Oh, nice.
So back to defeating your overwhelm, Matt. I'm going to echo this. I have a good friend of mine who was working as a teacher in New Jersey, and guess what? The teacher was really stressed out because she had spent 6 hours in her Zoom class trying to teach the kids math for 6 hours a day. Oh. That is not what we're looking at, you guys. That is not what we're looking at. Now, that was high school. Let's say I taught 5 periods. I would build myself a plan where I announced a challenge of the day. I would use tools like Delta Math. I would use tools like Desmos. I would use tutorials the kids could watch on their own. I would use things like Flipgrid to record their answers. It's harder to cheat in Flipgrid because you're telling me your answer, right? And so really this is a powerful graphic for me, because a lot of teachers are thinking that they're just going to sit and do 6 hours talking to a Chromebook. And I'm good with reviewing. Imagine this, Matt. What if every kid came back to school and every kid at your school could do their times tables? What would the benefit of that be?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong.
So that was a +1, wasn't it?
I think so. I thought it was a +1, which would have been a minute.
+1.
It's getting harder and harder to cut you guys off, because I don't
Steve, that was a +1.5, I think.
Yep. So anyways, just wrap that up as I slide into my next one, is you don't have to do 6 hours of teaching, and you don't have to hand out 1,500 assignments a week. So moving into my next slide, this is from Kim Vogie. If you look at the bottom, you guys, because there have been a lot of people asking, what's the link? What's the link? Screenshot that puppy. You got computers, screenshot it right now. Bit.ly Perfect Week 2020. Kim built out a beautiful week for 5th grade, math, language arts, history, science, and social studies. And this is how simple and elegant her plan is. It's really popular with everybody that's seen it. And so if you look at the math side especially, you've got math. That's her plan for the week, you guys. That's the whole week. and then here's all the resources she needs to get it done. And here's the beauty of this. When you get your kids in a tempo and a rhythm like this, the amount of direct instruction you do goes way down, because amen or oh my, you spend a lot of time explaining how to do the worksheet and you hardly talk about the content itself.
Oh, preach, brother. Preach.
And so that's part of the beauty of the Ditch That Textbook mindset and the Edu protocols, is that you don't have to reteach how to do the worksheet every day, because you have a normal, orderly work routine that is interesting and exciting, and the kids can get their thing done. And I'm out, Steve.
I love that. You know, this reminds me of a little piece of the Ditch That Homework book that my co-author Alice Keeler wrote into it. And she said, you know, when I was doing math homework with my students, we would spend so much time at the beginning of class arguing about the math homework and where the math homework was and why it wasn't done. And kids lined up to call their parents. And all of a sudden, when she quit giving math homework, you know what they spent that time doing?
Working on the math.
And talking about the math, all of that. Yeah, exactly. It's like whenever you've got the perfect week, whenever you've got the routine, whenever you know what's coming next, it eliminates a lot of that procedural junk and you can just get to the topic at hand. Totally love this.
Fab. All right. And that was your +1 using my slide. Now, Steve,
Yes,
it's a very exciting thing that we just invented. This slide goes to 11. We had promised 10 slides, but this slide goes to 11. And so if you guys look in your, if you look in your Zoom, there's a button that says Q&A, and Matt and I are excited to answer your Q&A style questions. So if, I've seen people asking questions. This is the time when we build it out a little bit and extend the learning.
Yeah, and let me throw another one on there. You can definitely ask the question, but in true 11 style, you know, John had 5, I had 5, that's 10, yours is 11. So if you can think of something that needed to go on this, we were talking about fantastic online learning ideas.
Categories we didn't get to.
Yeah, yeah. Now don't throw this into the chat because it gets so easy to get lost in there. If you throw it into the Q&A, we'll be able to throw those questions out and your own ideas out there. So which one would you put in there as number 11, or what question do you have for us? And it looks like, John, we got a question that you can take for this first one.
Yeah, so for John Dorn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a sneaky little trick here. Matt, you go ahead and take the other ones. I'm going to set up for John Dorn because I need to show him the picture of it, and I'm going to do that in another tab. Does that make sense?
I was getting ready to go to another tab too to answer one. I'm gonna take this one from Reva, very familiar name for me. I see her all over Twitter, and she says, what resolution should my screencasting be set at? This is a great question. So if you're doing screencasting, one of my favorite tools to do screencasting with is Screencastify. It runs in your Google Chrome web browser. And if you open up Screencastify and in that little Chrome extension, it's in the top right-hand corner of your, in fact, you can see John's Chrome extensions in the top right of his screen. Screencastify is a little pink one. But whenever you click on the Screencastify button, there's a little settings cog. And if you click on that, it gives you an opportunity to change your resolution. So 1080 and 720 are considered high def. For me, living out in very rural Indiana, I like to take it down to 360, which is standard def, whenever possible. Screencastify actually lets you take it down to 240 if you want. Now, if students are going to be reading, you know, like small text off of your screen, you'll want to be careful with that. But if it's just your face, that's going to make a huge difference. And then you can also change the frame rate. You can change the frame rate from like 30 frames per second, even down to 10. And that's going to make a huge difference on the size of the file too.
And Matt, you want to tell them about Handbrake?
Oh, Handbrake. Yeah. So Handbrake is a free little tool you can get off of the web that it'll basically let you process your file size to make it smaller. It basically compresses your video files so that they're smaller, so that they're easier to load.
You can turn 400 megs into 40 megs.
Yeah, it's huge. Well, makes it very small.
Yeah, it's a paradox once again. That's our theme for the night. So John Dorn had asked about the math reps and Nearpod idea. So if anybody hasn't seen math reps, mathreps.com, I put it in the chat there. imagine that in the old days, Matt, this would have been a different week of instruction, right? Add 10 times the greater, power of 10, all those would have been 1 week of instruction. And the math reps concept is the only thing that changes every day is the number. Guess what our number is for today, Matt? 11.
Of course.
So the kids know the routine of the work. And what the kids get the first takes about an hour to walk them through it all. But by our experience is that by the 4th, 5th, 6th day, the kids are down to 12, 15 minutes. That's a lot of math getting done in a short amount of time. So basically what I was sharing with the Nearpod example was if you did this, and Matt, I don't know if you even fully grasped it. You make one slide that's this, right? And then another slide that's this, and then another slide that's this, and another slide that's this. You drop each one of those into Nearpod and you make it a draw it activity, or the kids can answer by typing. Now the number is the same on each slide, but they work their way through. And what I end up at the end with, I don't have a lot of PDFs coming in. I have one email because kids can do Nearpod and Pear Deck synchronously or asynchronously. So I could literally crank them up in the morning and say, let her rip. And then you guys need to be done by 3. And I get one document that has all their answers. So that's the math reps idea. And that's just for you, Mr. Where did I lose him in the questions? I think it was
Dorn. Mr. Dorn, yes.
Yes, Mr. Dorn. Question from Michelle Quiter. Games, Matt. What about games?
That's the number 11. That's right. That's her number 11, which I think is fantastic. I think that's another lens that you can see your activities through is there an element, a game element that you can pull into the activities that you do? And I like to point out the fact that there are millions of different kinds of games all over the place. You can pull game elements from board games. If there's a board game that you like and there's a part of it that's kind of like the engaging hook, pull that out. You've got it in mobile app games and console video games like Xbox.
Well, and I'll plus one you, Matt. One of my favorite dirty tricks to play on my kids right before Ancient Greece unit was I had an old PC-based game called Ancient Greece. It's so imaginative. And I would literally let them play the first 3 levels in demo mode. And then they had to make a player's guide. Who's winning in this transaction, me or them?
I think everybody's winning, right, John?
Yeah. Well, I had almost no direct instruction other than designing what the player's guide looked like, right? And then they had to identify gods, demons. They had to talk about their economy. They had to talk about their strategic partners. They had to identify key vocabulary words. I'm not doing any direct instruction. I'm just watching them play games with their headphones on. So that's a pretty simple thing. I want to keep going on the questions, Matt. We have amazing questions. I don't know if you've looked at the Q&A.
Yes.
Jessica Teal says, how about doing online learning for learners aged 5 to 7 years old, less worksheety kind of stuff and more engaging? So I'll throw out a couple and then Matt and Steve, you can. I would say you can Nearpod your own kid. Make a Nearpod account. They're free. They have hundreds of activities in there like times tables and addition and VR field trips. Make your own for your kids. It works great for other kids that you don't know as well. Matt, what's one of yours that's kind of super engaging for kids 5 to 7 years old?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Christine Pinto, who wrote a book called Google Apps for Littles. And she's had her kindergarten students working with Chromebooks for several years now. And her big thing is about Chromebooks with littles. She says, yes, they can. A lot of times they're like, oh, they're too little. We can't do Chromebooks with them yet. She's got them doing things in spreadsheets where she'll give students a handful of gummy bears or a handful of M&Ms and say, let's sort these out and then let's make a bar graph. And she's got her kinders making bar graphs by changing the color of the background of the slides to create it. And they're doing it on their little iPads. They just pull up a blank spreadsheet. And now all of a sudden these kids are doing math and learning spreadsheet skills in kindergarten. So,
and I would argue, and Steve, I would love your thoughts on this. I would argue that from a Maslow's hierarchy level, Anna Bloom's, those kids are operating at a lot higher level, learning just a few spreadsheeting tools, just basic ones.
Yeah.
I'm not going to add anything because you've got 6 minutes and I want you to keep going.
Okay, we're gonna just keep banging them out. Here's another good one. I feel like it needs 3 hours a day of extra work to get to our level for 4 years of nonstop working. Are they wrong? Are they
This
wrong?
is a John Corippo question.
Well, I would say it took me that, but you can you can be a remora on my land shark, and I will give you all the stuff that already works. So,
Mm-hmm.
like if people go to eduprotocols.com, I've got literally 1 or 2 class periods, and that was part of the whole design of EduProtocols. Is we've got to be able to have these things, and I would love if Peggy's still around to hear her thoughts. Everybody doesn't want to learn Photoshop, Matt. Everybody doesn't want to learn how to run a Google domain. People want to teach kids. And so using things like quizzes appropriately and using just good old Google Slides to do a cyber sandwich, which is basically just 2 kids doing a Venn diagram together and writing a paragraph. But people can go to EduProtocols and get those things for free and steal them. It's a great time to be on Twitter. Maybe you can speak to that, Matt.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. The stuff that you find on Twitter, I always compare finding ideas on Twitter to shopping at Big Lots.
Oh,
I don't know if you all have Big Lots.
I got that.
But if you walk into a Big Lots store with a shopping list of things, you will be disappointed. If you need something for Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, you're not going to get it. But if you walk into a Big Lots store with an open mind, you will find the thing that you didn't realize that you needed until you saw it. And so when you start to gather those things on Twitter, sometimes you get those pre-created templates. Sometimes you get that perfect ed tech tool. Sometimes you get that essential question that you can ask your students, and all of a sudden, boom, you've got it. And I think the EduProtocols that John's talking about, this is about working smarter instead of harder. These are the low prep things. And one of the things I want to throw out that fits very much in this vein too, if you don't want to do 3 extra hours a day times 4 years, I want to introduce you to the idea I talked about earlier, which is retrieval practice. Go to retrievalpractice.org. And these are all sorts of strategies that you can use to help your students do the kind of learning that the brain is made to do so that they can remember things better long term. And retrieval practice is one big part of that. So that's my take on that one.
This one's good. If you're wondering why that slide is up, one of our people said, "Can you put slide 19 up for 3 seconds so that I can screenshot it?" So that's why that happened. That's awesome. Nice. I love that kind of precision. A couple other good questions. I don't understand this one. Can you please show the slide about PDF options for ease of use? Oh, okay. I think that was not using filled in PDFs.
I think you were actually showing that as an example of what not to do.
Yeah. So don't make a PDF editable. Whoever asked that one, do use things where the kids are truly building and interactive and working together. Let's see, 2 others. Good one. How do we convey to our administrator that the elementary should only be 1 or 2 hours a day? I would love to call your administrator, Heidi, and have a research-based discussion with them. But that slide that I shared, 19, if you'll look very carefully, that's from the National Board of Professional Teaching Standards or something like that. I've got the full slide. That is an actual national standard. So referencing that is good, but I would also say what kids can cognitively handle should make a lot of sense too.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to touch real quick on there was one up about, from Ms. Fitz. Do you have any suggestions for easy digital escape room formats in Google Forms, perhaps? I'm going to give you a real quick resource. I just dropped it into the chat. I've got
link, Matt, and I'll type it in.
I've already got it in the chat.
Okay,
it's a post on the Ditch That Textbook blog for 30+ digital escape rooms, plus a step-by-step guide for creating your own.
Matt, is this going to take me 4 hours to learn how to use this thing?
Well, if you use some of the pre-created ones that are there, then absolutely not. It may, I don't know, maybe for your first one, but everybody I've talked to that's done digital escape rooms say that they are super engaging and that they're worth the time in putting together. And these are definitely things that you can do via remote learning. So I'd say go check that out.
And then I want to finish with Jen Blaylock's question, because I think this is a fabulous way to end this little burst of creativity. Ready? How often should I try something new, right? So how often should I be doing that? And I would tell you for your kids' sake, what I tell people is do something new, for about 6, 7, 8 reps until you get good at it, and then add another thing. Do that thing until you do it and you get good at it. And guess what'll happen? And I got this quote from my dad, and I don't quote my dad a lot, even though we have a really good relationship. If you learn one thing a day, at the end of the year, you've learned almost 400 things, right?
That's right.
So you don't have to go from 0 to everything. You can, if you start adding a thing and get good about 6 or 7 reps, great. You can move on. In 2 weeks, you'll have 3 things, and in 2 you'll have some. And at least from an Edge protocols perspective, once you got about 7 or 8 Edge protocols, 2 things happen. You don't need many more. And the second one is the other ones are easy to learn.
Boom. Nailed it.
So, Steve.
Okay, you did really well on timing there.
Who was the winner tonight, Steve?
I think you both won. I think the audience won.
We all win.
We all win when we share. Right. And so we did the speed round, which we still need to honor the Boston Terrier. That dog's got talent right there. And then what can we take from this? Like, so how can we help our organizations learn more quickly? And I would love it if we had discussions like this in teachers' lounges and with tech committees. And I love this quote from Miyamoto Musashi. It may seem difficult at first, but everything is difficult at first. So thanks for joining us, Steve. I'll give it to you for closing us down.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody who's been here during this session, and for any of you who've been here for multiple sessions today. What a great day. Really appreciate it. John, Matt, have a good night. Take care, everybody. Bye now.